Welcome to Interviews with Innocence, a podcast about spirituality, consciousness, and exploring the wisdom our children bring into this world. I believe that our very young children are our greatest teachers. After all, they're the masters of living in the present moment, bubbling in unconditional love, enjoying the messiness of life, and curious about the universe in all its dimensions. The pure essence that young children exhibit lives within all of us. My hope is that these interviews will help us discover, embrace, and connect with the sacred core of childhood that resides within each of our hearts. I am your host, Marla Hughes. I am so happy to have Rosemary Altea back on the show today. You can go back and listen to Rosemary's bio, and it is also in the show notes. I met Rosemary through a friend, and I have been so impressed, if that's the right word, just so impressed, inspired, amazed by her beautiful work. And just a reminder, she will be on the show on December 17th at 2 p.m. to answer questions from listeners the best that she can. So if you would like to send in a question, please go to my website, interviewswithinnocence.com, and go to Contact Marla and send me your question, and we will let you know if we'll be using that on the show. So without further ado, here we go. You talked about some children, and you included when you were a child, are so sensitive, and sometimes they're a little bit not put down by that, but you're too sensitive or this or that. And you talk about the beauty of sensitivity, and that no one there's no such thing as being too sensitive. So can you just talk about that a little bit?
I can. I think that so many of your listeners will have had somebody say to them, the trouble with you,
yes,
or the problem with you is you're too sensitive. The problem with you is you're oversensitive. Your trouble.
That's so helpful, isn't it?
Well, I think we need to understand, and we need to remember that the people who are saying this to us, the trouble with you, the problem with you, are people who are the most insensitive, right? So let's put that into perspective. Anybody who says to anybody, the trouble with you is you're too sensitive, or stop being oversensitive, or stop being a baby, or whatever, I was always told that when I was a kid. They are the insensitive ones. Do you want to be insensitive? Of course not. Do I? Certainly not. I think that the most beautiful people, the most empathetic, the most generous, the kindest people are the most sensitive, and sometimes ultra sensitive, as I am, and I feel, Marla, as you are. Yes. Being ultra sensitive is so painful. It's the gift you really want to return. You do not want to say to Father Christmas or to God, whoever it is who gave it to you, no, I don't want this. It hurts too much.
Right.
But at the same time, how are we going to learn how to be empathetic if we didn't experience the pain? Mm-hmm. How are we going to learn anything if we are too insensitive? Because being too insensitive means that we are blind to the beauty of this world of ours. And I think that being ultra sensitive, I find such joy in my ultra sensitivity. I'm such a joyful person. I'm filled with joy, and I'm filled with the light of God, and I feel it, and I just want to share it with people. And yes, it hurts, of course it does. So then so does a new pair of shoes.
Right.
Break them in, get used to it.
And what a gift to celebrate a child's sensitivity and not say it's a bad thing or whatever, just to celebrate that.
I know that there are one or two people in my grandson's life who will say, "What are you crying for? Don't be silly." And I'm there. I'm like,
me too.
I am right there.
Yes.
I had occasion this morning to say to somebody, well, if you talk to him properly and nicely, he wouldn't be crying, would he? And he's crying because he's sensitive. Let's try a different way to talk to him, can we? Right. If a child cries easily thank God for that child. It means that they are sensitive, and that's what you want. Don't ever. My father, years ago, I was 15 or 16 years old. I was playing the piano and I was pining over a boy or something or another. And my father came in from the garden, and he called me to the door of the room where the piano was. And I was always terrified of what my father was going to do or say. But anyway, so he called me to the door and he said, "Come here." He said, "I've got something for you." And he's hold out your hand. And I held out my hand, and he put a large stone from the garden in my hand. It's a true story. He said, and he looked at me, he said, "I want you to make your heart like that stone."
Oh my
Now,
gosh.
he was trying to protect me. He was saying to me, "Harden your heart, girl, so you don't get hurt." That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to do that for me. He was trying to do a good thing for me. But even as he put that stone in my hand and told me, "Harden your heart," I knew innately that it was so very wrong.
Right.
And I knew that I'd never be able to manage it anyway. And thank goodness I didn't.
And so sad that he thought that that was the right thing to do.
But he did not do it cruelly, I'm sure. He thought, he was saying to me, what he was really saying was saying from his own experience, if you're too soft, people are going to take advantage of you. If you don't harden yourself, you're going to get hurt. If you don't toughen up, then then you're going to feel too much.
Right.
And so he thought that was a bad thing. What I'm saying is the opposite, I suppose. I'm saying, hey, soften up.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. We're doing a webinar on I think it's the 21st of November, and it's about walls and building walls. And we all have these walls around us, don't we? And we're afraid to come out. We're afraid to show our sensitivity. We're afraid to show who we are. And what I want to do is to help people break down those walls, come out from hiding. Because when you build walls, yes, you might be protecting yourself, but you've trapped yourself as well. You're trapped within those walls, and you don't know how to get out. You don't know how to express yourself. So sensitivity is the gift we don't necessarily want, but without it, we're sunk.
Yes. And the same with vulnerability, to when you're finally so vulnerable and your heart is just open. Yeah, it can be sort of scary, but it just opens you to so much empathy and compassion and everything you're talking about.
Absolutely. Being vulnerable is the scariest thing.
Yeah.
But if you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable, then you're going to miss out on so much. There's a great saying, it's a Buddhist saying, I do believe. Couldn't tell you where I read it, but it's a great saying. Allow the winds of heaven to dance between you and your fate. In other words, let the power of God, let the power of the universe, let the winds of heaven, let all of that beautiful energy, let it carry you, let it lift you. And don't be afraid to go with it. It won't let you down. It won't.
Wow, that's a great saying. So Rosemary, can you tell us about your first ever child patient?
Oh,
I think, and one of them and another child had an NDE that you worked with, a near-death experience. But can you just tell us the story of one of those that's your favorite?
my first child patient, his name was Mark. His name was Mark. Is Mark. I shouldn't talk about him as if he's dead, should I? Because he's not really, is he? His name is Mark. And a few years ago, it was nighttime. I was in my home, and it was about 12 o'clock at night, and the phone rang. And I picked it up, and there was a woman on the other end, and she was sobbing so hard I could not understand a word of what she was saying. And she began sobbing and screaming, and she was hysterical. She was basically really hysterical. And I sat on the phone with her for ages trying to calm her down, to say to her, "You've got to calm down, because I can't, and I don't understand what it is you want from me, but take it steady." And she told me about her son. And he'd had cancer for 2 or 3 years. He was 8 years old. He'd had cancer for 2 or 3 years, and she'd been to the hospital either that day or the day before, and she was completely desperate. And they'd sent her home saying, there's nothing else we can do for him. So she was searching for the miracle. How she found my name, I've no idea, don't know, couldn't tell you. But the next day, I went to see her. And by the way, I do want to say, as far as healing is concerned, I have never charged for healing and will never charge for healing. I just feel that it's a gift given to me, and it's one we should share. And so I went along, and she lived in a fairly poor neighborhood. And the first time I saw this little boy, it reminded me of when I was a child. My father, I was exactly 11 years old, and my hair had gotten tangled at the back, and my father's answer to that was that he practically shaved my head. He gave me a boy's haircut, shaved up the back all the way to the crown and so on. I had to go to school like this. Anyway, so that's a whole other story. But when I saw Mark, he was 8 years old, and he had the biggest eyes, very tiny. He even though he was 8, he probably only looked about to be 5, and very pale skin, beautiful. He was beautiful. He had not one hair on his head. And I immediately, we talked about the gift of pain when my father shaved my hair off and did that. Had that not happened, I would not have had the same immediate connection with Mark and the immediate empathy that I did have, because I knew what it was like.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I sat and talked to him, was very careful with him at first. He didn't know me. I gave him healing, and then I would visit on a regular basis over the next 2 or 3 months. He knew that he was dying. We just talked earlier on about talk to people, right? But nobody would talk to him about dying. And he consequently didn't talk to his mum about it because he would upset her. This poor woman, she was about 8 months pregnant. The father of the baby was in prison. So she had no one to support her. And her firstborn was dying and she could do nothing about it. And she had very little support from anybody. And I remember going one night, and I knew that it wouldn't be long before Mark left us. And I remember he was laid on the sofa, pillows behind him, blankets tucked up to his chin, and he said to me, Rosemary, can you tell me a story? Because I'd started telling him stories, because I feel that through stories we can explain things so much more. And we talked about teaching our children. Through stories we can teach our children many things. So I told him a story about an angel who was in heaven, and I told him about some of the stories of children who were in heaven. And he looked at me at one point and he said, Rosemary, and he whispered it. His mother was in the kitchen making a cup of tea. She always used to disappear when I was with him and keep busy somewhere else. I'm not quite sure why, but he whispered to me. He said, Mum doesn't know that I know that I'm dying. And I said, well, have you talked to her? And he said, no, because I don't want to upset her. I don't want her to know that I know, because I don't want to upset her. But I'm really, really tired and I would like to leave. Wow. 8 years old, such a wise little thing. He said, but I'm afraid, because I know that when I go, she'll be really, really unhappy. But he said, I also know I've got to go and I want to go. because I want to go to that place where there's heaven and where it's warm and where I'm not in pain anymore. And he said, will you help my mum to understand? And I said, you know what, Mark, this is what I'll do. I'll do my very best to be there for your mum if she needs me, and to do my very best to help her to understand if I can. And he passed not the next day, but early the following morning. So he knew that he was going. And you know, when people like myself, or people who are healers, or whatever, whether you're a nurse or a doctor, whatever it is, you think that you're the one helping them. You think you're the one giving to them. But actually, if you're open enough and you're not so full of yourself that you think, you know, that this child needs you, what it is we need them. We need them to teach us. We need them to show us the way. And I'll never forget Mark. I don't think you ever forget. He was my first child patient anyway. And I have to tell you, I was not looking forward to going, because I'm a coward. I don't like going into hospitals, and I don't like dealing with sick people, having been very sick myself when I was younger. I try to avoid it, but you know, those in the spirit world have had different plans. Too bad you don't like it. Get on with it anyway. But they give to you, your patients give to you, and this little boy gave me something so, so special. Wow. And I think through him I learned that we need to talk to each other, and whether it's a child or whether it's an old man, it doesn't matter. If someone's dying, talk about it, have a conversation. All of you get on the same page. Don't be afraid. I think we don't talk because we're afraid. Talk about it and communicate about it, because at the end of the day, these are the last moments you'll ever have with that person. So say what you have to say what you need to say.
At least on this earthly realm.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes, so true. So you articulate all of it so well. And once again, on the other side of that, when someone or an animal passes, what a gift to give a child to validate that, you know, that they can still connect with that person and talk to and love and ask for help and guidance. And Reese is a very, oh my gosh, sounds like a special, but you two belong together for sure.
Well, I mean, I knew, you know, I was told, gosh, how many years, there were so many years ago. I was told when I was a young woman, even before I started doing this work, I was told by a gypsy, a lady not so old actually, a gypsy who came into, I used to be a shop fitter, you know, sawing wood and anyway, doing stuff like that.
Wait, what? You used to do what? You worked in a shop where you sawed wood?
Yes, I did. Shop fitting.
Wow.
I put in floors, and I built, you know, cubicles, and you know, and I loved every minute of it. Yeah. When my daughter was little, yeah, I used to, because I could get her to school, go to work, and come home to pick her up from school. It was a great, great job. I loved it. And I was in this particular store one day, and this lady came in, and the two girls who were working in the store, I couldn't figure it out, but they rushed over to the far end of the store, hiding behind the clothing and pretending to be busy. And I looked at them thinking, what's going on? Because it's like a woman walks into the store and you've got a customer. And hey, you got a customer. And they wouldn't come out because they were used to her and they knew her. And, you know, so I came out, I was in the window at the time, laying floorboards, to be honest. And I came out and I said to her, can I help you? I'm not really the salesperson, but can I help you? And she said to me, well, dearie, cross my palm with silver and I'll tell you a fortune. And in those days, I didn't have silver, didn't even have coppers, let me tell you. So I looked at her and I said, I'm awfully sorry, but I don't have any money to give you, but I'm happy to make a cup of tea if you'd like one. So I went into the little back room and I made a cup of tea and came out, and she was talking to me. And she said, come on, dearie, cross my palm with silver. And I said, if you can do what you say you can do, I have no money to give to you. I'm sorry. And at some point she said to me, well, come on, I'll do it anyway. So we went into one of the cubicles. This was my first experience ever. We went into one of the cubicles, and I'm thinking, keep your head down. Don't let her know what you look. Don't
Right.
show your face. Don't let her read your face. And all these things that people do think. And the first thing she said to me, the very first thing she said to me was, wow. She said, what did you do to your side? Your side is extremely damaged and it's very scarred. And my head shot up. I couldn't help it. I'd had 2 major surgeries. I'd had a kidney removed, the second surgery. I had ribs missing, all of that. And I was fully clothed, and nobody can tell.
Right.
You can't see any of it. But my head shot up. And boy, did she went on to tell me so many things. Everything came true except the one thing. There's going to be a little boy come into your life, and he's going to be so special to you. And I'm thinking, oh no, I don't want any more babies. No, don't do that to me.
Right.
And I had to wait.
It did happen to you.
Yeah. I had to wait 30 years for that. And here he is. So he was always meant to be. And, and she, he knows that story. I've told him that story. So he knows that these things happen, and that we all experience these things. But yeah, turns out she was a gypsy. The things that she told me that came absolutely true.
Which is interesting that you're so astonished, because that you do exactly the same thing for people, even though you weren't practicing back then. So you mentioned a few minutes ago about that you had experienced being in the waiting room. I'm sorry, that just kind of grabbed me. We'll tell this story and then we'll start to wrap it up. But what is that experience?
Well, I'll try to be quick, but I had a patient.
You don't have to be quick. I decided we're going to put this into 2 different. It's an hour, so we'll just do two episodes.
Great. Okay, great. Well, I had a patient. Her name was Marjorie, and she had cancer. She'd had it for many years, actually. And her husband's name was Tony. And I used to have a healing center. And she came one day to the healing center, not knowing anything about it, very nervous, but she became a regular patient, and she would come every week. And as she got worse, I would then go to her home, because as healers, that's what we did. And we would go, and I would go and visit her. Maybe as the worse she got, I would go and visit her 2 or 3 times a week. And one day I went to the house. She knew I was coming, but anyway, as I was going in the door, the nurse had just visited her, and the nurse was coming out. So I started walking up the stairs, and she actually thought it was her husband. She didn't realize that I'd come in, and it was one of the most awful experiences that I've ever had in my life. She was screaming and crying, and God help me, and I don't want to die. And as I came up the stairs, I realized that she didn't really want me to hear this. And she saw my head pop up. I didn't know whether should I go back down and let her do it. And I thought, no, I'm going to go up there. And I went up the stairs, and I just held her. And she told me how afraid she was to die. And she asked, would it be possible for me to go with her? So I said, I can't promise anything, but if it's possible, yes, I will. If it's possible, I'll be happy to go. And so one morning, not too long after this, I woke up and sort of felt something. I'm not quite sure what, but something's going on. And Marjorie came into my head, and it was far too early in the morning to get up. So I lay back down, and the next thing I found myself literally moving through time and space. And I found myself in what could only be described as the waiting room. And there were chairs. It was a very long room. and there were chairs up and down, and I was sort of sitting on the far end, and people at the top end kept peering down and looking at me, and you could hear people whispering, "Who is it?" and "Who is that?" And some of them seemed to know me, but I didn't know them, and this was all going on. And then all of a sudden, I heard the whispers start. "She's here, she's here, she's here, she's coming, she's coming." And I looked to a part of the wall. Now, this is where people think I'm nuts. I know this. I know it sounds weird, but anyway, I looked to a part of where we were sitting, and it sort of suddenly opened up, and Marjorie just came almost like shooting through into this space. It's almost like she came down a chute through a hole, through a passageway.
Yes.
Right? So this woman came sort of through, and everybody's standing up, and people are embracing her, and they're happy and they're joyful, and at first I didn't know who it was, because the Marjorie that I knew was very yellowed. She was very jaundiced. She had no hair. She wore a wig. She had no teeth. The last time I saw her, she had no wig. She had no teeth. She was very shallow, very sallow, very sallow skin, and so on. This was not the Marjorie that I knew.
Yes.
This Marjorie, her hair was beautiful, radiant, her face shone, healthy and beautiful. She looked beautiful, and it took me a few minutes to realize that this was Marjorie,
Right.
and that I'd been allowed into what I term the waiting room.
Yes.
And I'd been allowed to be there, to actually go with her and be there and watch the joy and the joyful joining together of all the families, and seeing her being embraced by her parents. And it was truly, truly joyful. And so I sort of, let's say I came out of that, and I came out of it with the phone ringing. And again, it was about, I don't know, maybe 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And the phone was ringing, and I picked it up, and it was her husband. "I'm just letting you know, you're the first one I'm going to, yeah, I'm letting you know you're the first. Marjorie just passed."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "I know. And let me tell you what happened." And so I was able to tell him what happened and how joyful it all was, and that she was fine, and that she was, really well.
Wow.
But she was so afraid of dying, and so many people are so afraid of dying. And if they could have just witnessed this one moment in time, sitting in the waiting room and seeing how joyful those people are. When we lose someone, we mourn, we grieve. But what we have to remember is, on the other side of things, they're having a party up there.
Yes.
While we're sad and we've lost someone, they're celebrating. They're just having a party and saying, "Yippee!" She's, I remember them whispering, "She's here, she's here, she's coming, she's coming. Quick, quick, she's coming, she's coming." And the excitement and the joy in that waiting room was unbelievable.
I've interviewed a couple of people who have had shared death experiences. That's what I would definitely call this. And they've talked about just how incredibly beautiful
Yeah.
beautiful
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. It's really, honestly, it's indescribable. I think the most profound, the thing that perhaps startles me the most every time I'm able to do this, is the colors. It's almost as if
Yes.
All through our lives we've been wearing, it's almost as if we've had cataracts. We've not been able to see clearly.
Right.
And all of a sudden it's like the cataracts are removed, and the reds are more vibrant, and the greens are more lush, and the blues are more startling. And it's as if we couldn't see, and now we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I interviewed one gentleman. He's a medical doctor. I'm forgetting what kind of medical doctor, but he had a profound near-death experience, and he was talking about the colors, and also this always is in my mind. He said it was like just a blink and he was there.
Yeah.
Like I do this in the morning sometimes. I go up to my favorite tree and just look up in the sun and just do a blink and the colors. And he said, it's like, I'm thinking, it's the best. This is the best thing that could ever happen to anybody. I'll never forget him saying that. He was actually.
There are so many people who actually don't want to come back. They say, no, don't send me back there.
Absolutely. I have interviewed a lot of them, and so interesting. Well, we probably should wrap it up, Rosemary. But
this has been lovely. Really. You're such a joy. You have great questions. You're such a joy to connect with. And thank you again so very much for including me in your series, because I know you do a series of these things. So thank you so much. And one day I shall have you as a guest on one of my shows. I hope.
Absolutely. I would be honored. And the series is actually you, because I wanted to let my listeners know that Rosemary will be back. You have a called a webinar, but something on your Facebook called Story Time.
Well, that's we do that. It goes out. We stream it on YouTube and Facebook, my Facebook page, and Twitter. We and also I think. LinkedIn, we stream it, but every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do a story time, and those stories are fantastic. Some of those stories are just amazing, and I know you have a special. You listened in one day. I do believe you have a special story that you want me to tell at some point. Yes.
So you will be back, I think, next week to tell a story. I'll let the listeners know the name of the story, and it is I See You, and it just
we see you.
I'm sorry, we see you. And
we see you.
Yes,
and we see you, and we don't like you anymore.
Yes. So we'll have you back for that, and then again, hopefully we'll have some call-ins, and you can talk to some people that are on the show and have questions. So if people want to find you and sign up for story time, or how do they do that?
Well, they just go to they can sign up for story time. They can find me. My webpage is rosemaryaLtea.com, or they can email me rosemary@rosemaryaLtea.com, or they can just find me on my Facebook page, or go to YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. Again, Rosemary Altea, and so they can if they go to my web page, there are also all sorts of links and lots of different information and some little videos, and there's a little video on there that was from my last webinar. Very nice, very, very nice little video of a lady sort of getting very emotional and sobbing. We like that, don't we? we love it when people really feel. So that any of those mediums that you can find me there. I'm not hard to find. Or of course, if you're really, really stuck, all you have to do is say, as people used to do years ago, they'd go into a bookstore. I want a book. I can't remember what it's called, but it's by that woman, and I was known as that woman throughout the world. That woman, that woman who talks to dead people and people English. The people who talk to dead people. You've got me. That's me.
Wow. Well, beautiful. Listen, you have a wonderful day, and
thank you.
We will be talking very soon.
All right, darling. Thank you so much for today. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening in today. If you want to learn more about the show, you can find us at interviewswithinnocence.com and on Facebook or Instagram at Interviews with Innocence. Please write me a message, tell me what you liked, and let me know what else you would like to hear. I would love to hear from you. And if you liked what you heard, please leave us an iTunes rating and review. It helps other listeners find the show. Thank you.